Hey guys, so we're gonna go over my Magicka Sorc build. So this build is one of my more heavy-hitting Magicka Sorc builds. It's a lot of fun in group fights, especially. So real quick, we'll go over the gear. So this build uses Vicious Death because it's tuned for large-scale fights, and it uses Clever Alchemist to really pump up the damage output of Eye of the Storm. And we're using Slime Craw as well to get extra damage for Eye of the Storm. So, real quick, everything's in pen. Even though I'm a Magicka Sorc with shields, they can't be crit anyway, but I still prefer to have impen for the times when your shields drop so you don't get instantly nuked down and just die. So this extra impen really helps when your shields are down, which happens a lot because this build in particular is trying to jump in the middle of groups, so you are going to get focused oftentimes by 3 or 4 people, and your shields are going to go down during that time. So it's really important to have impen here as well. So the Clever Alchemist, we're running 5 light first of all, 1 medium, 1 heavy. So Clever Alchemist is only procced on our Restoration Staff bar. So when we drink a potion, we want to make sure we're on a Resto Staff bar to get the extra spell damage. And then we bar swap and go to the Lightning Staff. Now, Lightning Staff's pretty important on this build. I'll explain why after. But yeah, 3 Vicious Death Jewelry, 4 Clever Alchemists on the body, Vicious Death Gloves. You can put the gloves pretty much anywhere you want. It doesn't matter. Optimally, you'll have, I don't have the light Slime Craw helmet and shoulders, but if you do, then you can wear those and then change your chest to heavy and your pants to medium, and then the Vicious Death Gloves can go in any of the gloves, belt, or boot slot, and then just make these 3 light as well. So you'd have 3 light here, 1 light, 1 light. But because I don't have the monster helmet in light, I just run 5 light on the body, heavy, medium. It's fine. I mean, if you want to min-max completely, then you would want to have this heavy, this medium, and these 2 light, but it's not that big of a difference. I run 3 spell damage jewelry glyphs on the jewelry because my sustain is fine enough because I run dark conversion on the back bar, and I'll show you what that is in a bit. But yeah, so the idea behind this build is you proc Clever Alchemist, you're going in with a Destro ult, maybe a proximity det, and then into the middle of a group, and then Vicious Death should proc if you get anyone. If you kill anyone, then you can likely kill 5, 6, 7, 8 upward, going up number of people. It's a pretty abusive build. So yeah, that pretty much covers it for the gear. We'll talk about skills now. So as far as skills go, Crystal Fragments, you have to have this on any Magicka Sorc. It's your best single target damage ability, huge burst damage. Storm Pulsar. Now this is interchangeable. This I use when I'm straight up going into, again, large scale group fights, because I do have a lightning staff on, so I can just heavy attack with the channel to do single target damage if I want. So I like this for debuffing the enemy group and just more AoE damage on top of it. But you can always swap that out with Crushing Shock. So this is the other like bread and butter Sorc skill. So if you're finding yourself in more small scale situations, you can put on Crushing Shock instead, and even maybe swap your Lightning Staff for a Fire Staff to get more single target damage. And the reason why you'll get more is from, what passive is it? This passive right here. The Flame Staff will change your increased single target, whereas the current Lightning Staff we have buffs AoE damage. So your Eye of Lightning will actually hit harder than an Eye of Flame, just for having the Lightning Staff on. This also buffs your proximity det damage as well, which is important to know. So because I'm mainly sticking with AoE focus, I keep Storm Pulsar here. This is the main execute. This is also a really good spammable too, so you can just throw these on various people around and just watch them die. It's very strong, and it does more AoE damage too when one person does die. But the key part of this is that that the person you execute with it is going to proc Vicious Death. They're just going to die, and then they're going to shoot 20k damage at the people around them, which is huge. Streak for mobility. This is absolutely key. Also, the stun is really important because, again, when we're engaging another enemy group with the Destro ult and proximity det, we want to keep them CC'd. So the idea is on your back bar, your resto bar, you're going to drink your potion. You're going to put up proximity debt, you're going to bar swap, you're going to cast Eye of Lightning, then you're going to streak through the group to stun them all. Once they're, by the time they're stunned, this is going to be ticking. The proximity debt's probably going to go off, and Vicious Death is going to likely proc if you kill even a single person, and a lot of them are going to die. Hardened Ward. Now, a lot of Sorcs run this on their back bar. I prefer to run it on my front bar, and the reason why is because you need some kind of defense while your Eye of the Storm's ticking. So I like to have this as a spammable on the front bar to just keep my ass alive, and that's pretty much the only point of having it here. And it makes shield stacking a little easier once you're used to it, because you only have to cast one on your back bar, and by the time you cast this on your back bar, cast the other one, bar swap, you know, one of your shields might have already ran out because they're only 6 seconds now. So I like having this one here, so I only have to catch just one shield on the back bar, bar swap, have this one up, and then I'm good to go, continue fighting. So back bar, this is the main Magicka sustain, which might seem a little weird, but I have the Serpent Stone, so I have a little more stam recovery, which is pretty sweet because this allows me to both dodge roll, break free more, etc., but also it's providing me more sustain in Magicka because I can just keep casting Dark Conversion. I mean, it's kind of insane how much this build can actually cast it. I can just keep spamming this. You can watch my stam bar. It keeps going up, keeps going up, keeps going up. I only have 10k stam, but I mean, look how many times I'm casting this. It's kind of insane. And again, that's going to give me 4k magic back and 8k health every time I cast it. So that's a pretty strong skill for this build in particular. Healing Ward is our main heal. We only use this when we get super low. Proximity Debt. This is, again, big AoE damage. The focus is for fighting large scale groups. Now, you can swap this out, again, like you would with Crushing Shock. So if you're going to go single target focused, you can swap out for Haunting Curse. And then on the front bar, you'd swap for Crushing Shock. And you can also swap in, I don't have it on me right now, but an Inferno Staff of Vicious Death, and that's going to give you more single target damage overall. So then you're basically, your burst combo would be like cast Haunting Curse, bar swap, execute them. The only reason you execute first is because if you look at Endless Fury, it's if they fall below 20% health within 4 seconds. So then you can cast like Crushing Shock, Crystal Frag, and by the time you frag them, this will blow up. This will likely execute them when the Crystal Frag drops them low, and this has already done some damage too. So it's a pretty sweet burst combo that you'll get familiar with the more you play Magicka Sorc. But because again, this whole focus is for big AoE damage, I'm keeping Proxy Debt here for now, and Pulsar here. That does not mean though that you won't be able to dish out some damage in if you get yourself caught in a 1v1. You can still like use your Lightning Staff heavy attacks, time your Crystal Frags with your execute, and this is these two alone is a lot of burst damage. So you can keep your shields up. Shields will proc this. Just keep that proc ready, and then start getting them low with like your Lightning Staff, and maybe you can debuff their healing or something with that. Even using Proxy Debt just for a little more burst damage and single target, you can definitely make it work. Just keeping them CC'd, etc. And then once they get into a range where you can get a frag off, just execute them and they're probably dead. Again, our second shield here, Harness Magicka. I like this more as opposed to the other one. I know the other one's stronger, but this, because we have pretty low Magicka regen on this build, 1300, it just gives a little bit more sustain, and it combos nicely with Hardened Ward. So if you have both these up, and your Hardened Ward's the shield that's actually taking damage, this will still give you Magicka back, which is pretty nice. And then Power Surge. This is just because, now I have a very specific reason why I like Power Surge over things like Entropy. I know a lot of sorcerers will use Entropy. I like to be able to pre-buff with this. So I want to have a skill that's going to give me my buff before I engage the fight. Because if you're wasting time in a fight casting Entropy to get damage on an opponent, or to get your buff up, your opponent's already been able to start applying pressure to you, and then you're on like the tempo of the fight can quickly swing against you. So this is why I like having this, so I can start the fight ready to go. And also the extra heal's nice. It's not super mandatory, like, because most of our survivability comes from shields anyway. It's mainly just because I can pre-buff for the spell damage. And then the second ultimate is Energy Overload. Now you can swap this out just like I mentioned with other builds to negate, and this will provide a lot more group utility. But if you have enough negates in the group, Energy Overload is going to give you a third bar. And then here's where I get even more group utility. So I'll keep Daedric Minefield up. This for locking down breaches. Same deal with Volcanic Rune. You can drop both in a breach and just watch people get stuck. Dark Conversion, I keep this here to keep the magic up. Now this is a really sweet combo with Efficient Purge. So if your group is in the middle of a keep, like you're pushing a keep, and your opponents have tons of oils up, you can spam the living hell out of Efficient Purge like indefinitely because of Dark Conversion. Sometimes I even swap this more for Cleanse to get the additional healing while still purging my allies. So, but every time you cast Purge, it's like Purge, Dark Conversion, Purge, Dark Conversion, and you'll just like never run out of Magicka. Your stam's pretty much fueling Efficient Purge at that point. And then Retreating Maneuver. I use this just for getting around Cyrodiil mainly, but also for pushing through breaches with my group. So I can cast Dart, I can cast Retreating Maneuver, you know, buff up with an immovability pot, and then I'm not getting I'm not getting stuck in a breach. There's no roots that's gonna hit me. There's no snares, no stuns, etc. It's just a very, very good way to get through heavily defended breaches. So that's pretty much the overload bar. I'll talk about potions and food real quick. So the potions I use on this build, it's basically just one. I use these Essence of Immovability. I used to use ones with spell crit instead of detection, but I like these for a couple particular reasons. I can find Nightblades really easy and prevents me from getting ganked because of the immovability proc. And the magic regen's really key as well. But the other reason is because when we're engaging a keep and there might be a large enemy group stealthed, I can use this when going through a breach to pre-buff with the immovability so I don't get stunned, but as well I can also locate those large enemy groups that are stealthed around a corner or whatnot because of the detection radius. So it gives us a little bit of an upper hand in a fight if we have more knowledge about what's around us. That's why I like the stealth detection in particular on this specific potion, and I don't find that losing the spell crit from Major Intellect is that big of a deal. Because I'm in light armor, like 35% spell crit seems to be fine enough anyway. We don't really need a whole lot more than that. Mainly because additional spell crit doesn't really synergize well with Vicious Death anyway, because that proc can't crit anyway, so it doesn't matter. Food. Now, because our regen is so low, we got to use the Witch Mother's Potent Brew. This is providing us the necessary Magicka recovery that we need, in addition to having Dark Conversion. So even though our Magicka recovery, even with this with this food, is still fairly low, Dark Conversion makes up for the rest of it. So that's pretty much all the gear, food, potions, etc. So basically all you would really do, the whole idea behind this build and the reason why we run Slimecraw is because we're massive AoE kind of bomb potential. We're a lot more resilient than a Nightblade bomber, so we can actually engage fights without, the essence of surprise and still win them. So the idea here is, again, this passive is going to give us massive AoE. So we get huge damage on this from the Ancient Knowledge passive. We get huge damage on the Proxy Debt from that passive. We get more damage on the Storm Pulsar. And in addition to all that, Slimecraw is giving us another 8% Minor Berserk buff. So we get quite a bit of additional AoE damage with Clever Alchemist procced. So just to show you, proc Clever Alchemist here, buff up with the Surge, and then spell damage is at 3,500. This right here is ticking for 10k in Cyrodiil. That's pretty freaking insane. Proximity Debt about 7k, but that's increasing. So if you hit 5 people with it, it's 125%. This is over like a 13k hit with that full buffed, or with like 5 people being hit by it. So 13k, like 10k, you're 23 plus the additional damage from this. This is going to go up. The buff ran out, or the Clever Alchemist buff ran out, so this is a little lower now. But it's like 6.5, maybe 7k, fully buffed. Storm Pulsar. So I mean, you could see pretty quickly like 30k AoE damage is going to probably take out a light armor user, and then you get the vicious death proc on top. So all that damage added together is a really, really efficient way to start wiping groups with this build. And that's kind of what like the whole point of this is. It's just a massive AoE burst potential build. You have a lot of survivability because of your shields, a lot of healing because of healing ward. You can jump in. You're very mobile. Jump into groups. You know, spam your AoEs, etc. Call for debts. You know, time everything together. Get a proxy deck going, and then bam, just nuke it all. Also keep in mind the pulsar debuff is effectively, because their health is going down by 10%, like another 10% damage buff on all your AoE skills. So if you can hit this before Eye of Lightning or Proxy Det, or well, before Proxy Det goes off really, these are effectively going to be doing more damage in relation to their overall health pool, which is kind of ridiculous. So the amount of additional damage you get overall for AoE damage on this build is very, very strong. So if you can get like in your group running 2 to 3 people running this, or even more, like other large scale groups are going to have a real hard time staying alive, especially if you have people in your group that can lock people down, like a Stam, like a sorcerer tank with Encase, or a DK tank with Talons, etc. Warden tanks with, I don't remember the name of that new skill, that ice thing that roots people like Talons. All those things combine very nicely with this, especially if you have negates, because they're not going to be able to heal through it either. So that's pretty much the whole build. We'll get into champion points real quick. So I put 51 in Ironclad. Again, this is probably the most important passive when you're getting focused down, because most of it's going to be direct damage, and this works with your shields. These also work with your shields, so reducing incoming damage by a certain percent. This was just, I had 1 point left over, so I put it there. And then I put 72 in a Bastion because our main defense is shields again. So these things all support us very well and make us super tanky. 51 in a Warlord, again, break free and dodge roll reduction with tumbling. These are going to be the things that keep you alive the most, actually, not even your damage reduction stuff. If you get stunned indefinitely, you're just dead. If you can't dodge roll out of negates, again, you're just dead. Sprinting helps too. We use streak for most of our mobility and just getting around in general, but for the times that you do need to sprint, a little bit of cost reduction is good. And then in this tree, so Magicka recovery, just to buff the Witch Mother's Potent Brew, and you know we're high elf, so we already get a decent amount of Magicka recovery. But then the Stam recovery to help with our Serpent Stone. So this actually is pretty nice because it gives us the constant sustain that we need in Stam recovery to keep Dark Conversion going, which is really, really important so we can keep our Magicka up. So these two are kind of like just giving us a bunch of Magicka recovery in general. And then damage. So I actually put all my points into Master at Arms for direct damage ability. So this actually works for your AoE stuff as well, as long as it's not a dot. It doesn't, I don't think this buffs Eye of the Storm, so if you want, you can put some points into Thom too. But I find that all of my other damage abilities scale better with this passive, so I'd rather have more Master at Arms. But I have a big chunk in the Elemental Expert anyway, just to buff everything, because everything I do is Flame, Frost, Shock, or magic damage. So now, because we have a decent amount of crit, it's not huge, we do want to increase our crit damage because everybody's running Impen pretty much. So having more crit damage changes how their Impen affects your skills. It you get more overall critical damage, so they have to invest a lot more critical resist to reduce your damage overall. So this is going to allow us to get the reach we need to really kill 1 or 2 people to proc the Vicious Death to finish off the group. Now I didn't put a lot in a spell erosion, just whatever was kind of remaining. The reason for that is because we already get a lot of spell penetration from being light armor and having sharpened on our main weapon. But the little extra points here, these are helpful against tanks, so you can get them in a reasonable distance to be executed with Vicious Death. And then Shattering Blows to make sure that we're getting the shields down on enemy Sorcs. This is pretty important on most of the builds I run, just because Sorcs, nothing else really scales against shields well. They don't crit. Spell penetration doesn't matter against them. So you need things like this to bring those shields down. That's pretty much it for champion points and for the build overall. Yeah, give it a try, guys. I mean, and Slimekraut's super sweet because you look like a freaking Super Saiyan when it's up. Arms are glowing, especially with crystal fragments active. Look at that, just beautiful. All right, have a good one, guys.